One of the most beautiful year-round gentlemanly fragrances available has been sitting under my nose all along. Hello, welcome back to Seldomly Often. I'm Daniel. Today we're talking fragrances, and this is a practical review of Dior Eau Sauvage Parfum. These reviews are for fragrances that I have a lot of experience with, multiple wears in many situations, and I meant to give you a general idea of what it feels to wear the fragrance. As per usual, I do a lot of research before buying fragrances, but I don't really like to go into details about notes and accords as I don't think that they help the end user. I'd rather talk about the wear experience as a whole. I'm not afraid to admit that I can be very obsessive when pursuing interests, all those passions and hobbies that come and go throughout my life. I tend to go all the way deep down, super quick, skipping steps, aiming for the best, for the top. And in fragrances, this has led me down to the niche head rabbit hole. And although I always manifested passion and interest towards perfumes and towards fragrances as far back as I can remember, as soon as I subconsciously decided to make it my thing, to make it my new passion, basically when I smelled Tom Ford's Ombre Leather, I went all in, skipping steps and basically leaving all the designer fragrances back just because I thought they were a lesser tier, they were not worth my time. And unfortunately, this approach has led me to skip very good, iconic, solid designer releases within the last years just because I deemed them not good enough. And that's super bad, it's super sad. Case in point, I only smelled Dior Sauvage, the EDT, the very iconic blue freshie, fairly recently. I smelled it for the first time about a year ago. That's absolutely crazy. Just because I refused to go down that route, just because I refused to go into the more popular direction, I thought that I was above it. And obviously behind that choice, other than the childish stubbornness, there's also the matter of taste. I was just never into blue fragrances. Even the first time that I smelled Bleu de Chanel, the EDT, basically when it came out, it wasn't really triggering me in any way. I didn't find it appealing. I just didn't like it. I've been always drawn to more deep, dark, rich, woody, and just overall stranger scents. And that's why Tom Ford's Ombre Leather had such an impact on me. And by the way, this is all absolutely hilarious because it's coming from the guy that wore Paco Rabanne Black Excess, the original, as a signature scent for many, many years. So I guess we all grow up eventually. Anyway, this approach basically had me going from Tom Ford's Ombre Leather all the way straight to Amouage Interlude Man. And that's absolutely insane because I skipped basically everything. I've talked about the Dunning-Kruger effect in the past. I've talked about it in my review for Grand Soir by MFK. And that curve, because it's a curve, basically describes the effect of apparent early knowledge and self-entitlement. The subject in this case feels that they know enough to make decisions and to make proper decisions at that. And when they reach the plateau of this first hill, they basically start realizing that in effect, they don't really know much. And that sudden realization basically crumbles all that apparent knowledge that was built up in the beginning, putting you down in a pit. And that pit becomes the foundation for the gathering, for the actual knowledge that is to come. It's an absolutely amazing effect, very easy to observe, way more common than people think, and I'm the first culprit of this. If you dive deep enough, fast enough, and with enough obsession within a specific subject, there's a high likelihood that you're gonna encounter the Dunning-Kruger effect. And this whole intro is basically here to tell you that I've been quietly ignoring some of the best designer releases on the market. Dior Eau Sauvage Parfum is easily one of them. It's such a beautifully balanced, all year round, gentlemanly scent, which is absolutely signature scent worthy. It's an absolutely amazing perfume, and I'm kicking myself because it's been under my nose all this time. This, by the way, is the current reformulated 2017 edition. Today, I'm gonna be only referencing this because I have basically zero experience with the 2012, and I cannot make any comments or comparisons. And despite only getting this bottle at the very start of the year, I got it at the Zurich airport at the duty-free at an excellent price, by the way. I had smelled the line before, both the EDT and the Parfum, but my only experiences with these was in a very rushed manner, basically walking through a shopping mall, walking through an airport, and just quickly spraying it on. My reaction, by the way, was always very, very good. I always thought, hey, this is really good and fresh, and a nice detachment from the usual blue fragrances that you find in these sort of places. But I never ended up giving time to the fragrances, never ended up stopping and thinking about them. I always kind of classified these as very mature and maybe not for me, and I just walked past that opportunity. In the end, I'm not really sure what eventually got me to get a bottle. Maybe it's because I was at the airport and I really wanted to get something at the duty free, and by exclusion, all the other blues, all the other generic designers just weren't cutting it for me. So I gravitated towards this, and I actually had zero regrets. This has been one of the best fragrance discoveries of the last month. The original Dior Eau Sauvage, definitely not to be confused with the more youthful blue Sauvage, is actually, I think, one of the oldest men's fragrances from Dior, going back to 1960 something. That is a lot more of a cologne style of fragrance, very, very fresh, very citrusy, a little bit mature in a way. And when the Parfum version came out in 2012, it was a massive redesign of the fragrance, super dark, super rich, very, very long lasting. It basically smells nothing like the original except for maybe the top citrus notes, the top aromatics. In 2017, the fragrance was reformulated, and apparently, because again, I have never smelled the 2012, this is much more in tune with the original concept in the original EDT. This is, in my opinion, one of the best all-around, all-season wears, gentleman scents, and it basically rides the line between a citrusy aromatic and a nice, energetic, old-school, vintage-style fougere. I think it's super wearable. You kind of have to embrace this mature, gentlemanly, elegant vibe, but once you've done that, this is easy, signatures, and worthy. It's absolutely amazing. But we're going to be talking about the wear experience and the scent profile after we cover the presentation. Dior is easily one of the top tier prestigious designers out there, and when it comes to presentation, Eau Sauvage Parfum is no slouch. It's simple, yet it feels elegant, it feels luxurious, it feels high quality and well made. The box this comes in is very much a throwaway, as most designers are, but the bottle is absolutely gorgeous. I really like this rib design because it hides fingerprints and it still feels high quality. It hides any imperfections in the glass. I really like it. The cap is a little bit plasticky, but it also feels relatively high quality and solid. It's definitely heavier than you would expect. Maybe it's because of the magnet, which has a very, very satisfying click. It's also a very strong magnet that easily clicks into place and allows you to pick up the bottle from the stem. The bottle itself, as I said, is really, really high quality. The sprayers for Dior are definitely the highlight of the presentation. The atomizers are some of the best in the business. They perfectly combine diffusiveness, pressurized action, but also they spray a lot of liquid and it's easy to aim. Let's give it a couple sprays. This fragrance, by the way, is absolutely amazing. It's really hard to overspray. It has such a delightful, elegant, nice presence. It's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, I really like this. The presentation, again, is functional. I really don't have much to add because it's relatively simple, relatively standard in designer terms. The labeling feels good quality. Everything feels pretty nice. The print looks good. It just feels functional. It's not super high-end or luxurious. There's no additional frills. I feel that Dior really knows their audience with this. This is for the manly man, for the simple gentleman that goes for practicality, and it really hits that spot. When it comes to price, Dior Eau Sauvage Parfum is relatively expensive in the designer realm. I think that this retails 100 ml of this at least retail for about 130, 140 bucks. Again, I got this at the Zurich duty free and it was much cheaper because if you also reserve, you get an additional 20% off. I think I paid 95 euros for this, which is great. I'm not really sure about the presence at discounters for this, but for about 100 bucks for 100 ml, I feel that it's pretty good value, especially considering that it's very, very persistent, very powerful. It projects a ton and it just lasts a really long time. But on to the scent profile and wear experience for Dior Eau Sauvage Parfum. What does this actually smell like? So as I mentioned before, this is basically a cross between a very citrusy aromatic and an old school fougere. It definitely has an old school, gentlemanly sort of vibe. You definitely have to be more mature or at least more put together. You need to know what you want. A lot of reviews on Parfum and Fragrantica really emphasize this fact, saying that this is a 50-year-old plus fragrance, basically a dad or grandpa scent. I don't necessarily agree because the citruses in here are very, very zingy, very energetic. It has a very good presence. It smells modern in a way, in a weird way, but it's also quite vintage. This is actually a relatively simple concoction, but it adds a lot of nuance. It adds a lot of complexity. If I were to describe it very, very simply, it's basically citruses up top, very fresh, very green citruses with a hint of fresh soapiness, maybe from the lavender, has a little bit of that minty freshness, that barber sharpness, and then it dries down to a resinous incense or like a resinous LME. And if you really want to scratch the surface, that's pretty much it. The reality is that the more I wear this, the more I discover the various nuances and the more I discover the various complexities. You can really overspray the crap out of this and not really offend anyone except for who finds very gentlemanly colognes offensive in a way. But other than that, going all in with the sprays really allows you to just pick apart the scent and really allows you to analyze it further. I do like this scent. I do wear it a lot. I have put a reasonable dent given the fact that I only picked it up in early January. But every time I wore at least 5 to 8 sprays, and that's pretty unusual for me. I usually keep it way lower, and not because it's not potent, it's just because it's super wearable and really, really fun, and just, I don't know, it just puts me in a good mood. It gives me a boost of confidence. And just for reference, I'm 40 years old and I deem myself a very casual adult, so I'm not necessarily leaning into all that elegance, all that class that this sort of demands for. Going into a little bit more specifics about the scent, as I said, this opens up incredibly energetic, incredibly zingy. The citruses in here are very, very vivid. They're very beautiful. The main citrus that I can detect is easily bergamot. It has that very green, rindy, oily sort of smell. This bergamot is very thick, but it lies in the high part of the tone range. It has a nice ring to it. Maybe it's aided by this beautiful subtle lavender that adds a little bit of cleanliness, a little bit of soapiness, and just overall adds class and elegance to the scent. The mid-tone of the scent is still dominated by citruses. Maybe they're a little bit sweeter, maybe some very subtle florals, but the main star of the show here is that resinous elemi. Elemi is a light resin that has a little bit of a lemoniness to it, but it's also sticky and gummy, and to a degree a little bit stuffy. In the deepest of dry downs, you also get the residual of this elemi, and then you start picking up on a more traditional sort of base. Maybe there's some sort of vetiver. It smells bitter, it smells ashy, it smells dry. As the scent wears, it basically literally dries off. It feels less oily, and it starts picking up this very manly, musky sort of like undertone. It's really clean, it's really beautiful, still super elegant, and the way it dries down, it definitely goes a little bit more vintage, at least in my eyes. The wear experience for this in general, given the fact that it's designed to be a signature scent, is very functional, very practical. The fragrance is very, very predictable, extremely stable, and it doesn't really transition much top to bottom. Yes, you lose a little bit of that citrusy zing up top because citruses are a very volatile compound, and in the bottom you do get a little bit of that bitter vetiver that kind of emerges from the base, but overall it's not surprising. It's not designed to be that. It really never catches you off guard. Very, very predictable, very, very beautiful. I enjoy the hell out of this every time I wear it. Time to talk about some practicality, starting off with the performance. Longevity for Eau Sauvage Parfum is absolutely exceptional. You get easily 8 hours plus of wear. It's very persistent, very tenacious, especially when sprayed on clothes. And this is a scent that you just spray all over. You really don't necessarily focus on your skin or anything like that. This is, you put on a shirt and you spray the hell out of yourself on it. And it's really, really good for that. The projection is also amazing, especially for the first 2 to 3 hours. The citrusy zing is always easy to detect. It really envelops you and it creates this beautiful scent bubble. Again, it can come across as a little bit vintagey, it can come across as a little bit dad scent, but it really depends who you're working with or who you're spending time with. In general, all I have to say is that the wear experience curve is incredibly well tailored. The scent fades off in such a beautiful, natural, realistic way. It's never surprising, never jarring. It's just an overall amazing wear experience. When it comes to actual versatility in use case, as you may suspect, Eau Sauvage Parfum is a superstar. It's just so incredibly functional. This can be worn in any situation, day to night, casual to elegant. It's just so incredibly practical. I wouldn't necessarily wear this to the gym because that elemi component adds a little bit of darkness that doesn't necessarily convey gym vibes, but the citruses are incredibly invigorating and they're a perfect start to the day. I love wearing this in the morning. I love wearing this like after I wash my face. It's like a blast of fresh air to the face. It just brings my mood up a couple notches. It's really, really nice, and it has a similar effect to other very pungent, very direct fougères like Sartorial by Penalligans. That one also is amazing. Again, thanks to that fantastically tailored wear experience and to the exceptional functionality, this would make for an amazing signature scent, an amazing 4-season signature scent at that. I truly believe that this can be worn in every situation and in every season. You can wear this in the dead of summer and you can wear this in the frigid winter and it would still work absolutely well. And actually, I can't wait to wear this in the heat because I have a feeling that the very beautiful green notes in here will be even more emphasized. When it comes to demographics, although I'm a huge proponent of anyone wearing anything, this one here comes across as decisively masculine. There's really nothing feminine about it. It just comes across as a dad scent. Age-wise, it's also a little bit of a mixed bag. You have to be more into perfumery, you have to be a little bit more mature, you have to be more put together. Again, it comes across as a stereotypical gentlemanly scent. Very citrusy aromatic or very old school fougere. Make it as you wish. It's not for everyone. It's not for young people. When it comes to imagery and narration, this is first and foremost a designer. It's also a Dior. It doesn't transport me anywhere. It doesn't give me any sort of image. It's just an incredibly well-balanced, functional perfume that is meant for you to smell good, smell fresh, smell tight, and just give you a boost for the day. There's really not much to add. Come to think about it, I can't think of any Dior fragrance that I experienced that gives me any sort of image. They're all very functionally designed. They're all beautifully designed. Okay, time to talk about some options for my reviewed fragrance. In the case of Eau Sauvage Parfum, I really decided to go all in for the elegant, gentlemanly aspect. And I've talked about this fragrance a lot. I've been basically only talking about this fragrance. This one here is Bracken Man by Amouage. And I know I already featured this as one of my favorite fragrances from the last winter months in the daily category. It's just that good, it's just that functional. I love wearing this. It has so much complexity, it has so much nuance, but it still retains a fairly simple message, a fairly simple approach. It doesn't really transport me anywhere. It's very non-narrative, which is a stark difference from most Amouages. It's just super functional. This is like the epitome of dad scents in my opinion. It's just so comforting. It's such an easy wear. I grab it, spray it on, whatever the situation, it works well. I also experienced really good reception from this fragrance, not that I get any compliments, but when people get close, maybe for work, I can really tell that they like what they're smelling. It's just such a reassuring, such an easy reach. It's not necessarily dumb reach because I would not categorize an Amouage like that, but it's the dumbest reach of all Amouages that I own. It's something that I can totally see myself wearing as a signature scent. In the past weeks, this has graduated, almost taking the place of Reflection 45 for that fragrance in the case of this hypothetical one fragrance wardrobe. It's that good. I have no idea why Amouage decided to discontinue this. I just can't see this not selling. It's just so appealing, so beautiful. Amouage, please bring it back like Amouage Sunshine Man. It's absolutely amazing. My second fragrance definitely brings up the elegance a couple notches, and it predominantly features rose. This one here is the amazing Ormond Jayne Nawab Oud Intensivo. This is one of the more wearable oud fragrances in my collection. It's one of the more wearable oud rose fragrances that I've ever came across. I got this, when was this? Early December, maybe mid-November, and I was completely blown away by the wear experience for this. It's super surprising. It wears very, very light, considering it's an oud, considering it's Intensivo, but it's light, it's fresh, it's a definite four-season wear. It's such a beautiful signature scent profile. It's definitely rosy, so it's quite recognizable. The oud in here is also very present. It's not one of those scents where the oud is kind of fleeting. You kind of have to imagine the oud being there. The oud is easy to detect, but it's not offensive. It's a very refined French, very westernized sort of oud. It's absolutely beautiful. I love wearing this. The presentation for this bottle is one of the best in my collection. It's just so well made. The glass is absolutely perfect. The atomizer is insane, incredible. And the scent itself is so beautifully reassuring, so simple to decipher. There's no frills, there's no surprises. It's just a really good, fresh, manly scent. And I say fresh because I really want to emphasize how light it wears. It wears so surprising. I absolutely love wearing this in pretty much every situation. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same for the other fragrance that I got together with this, the Montabaco Intensivo. That has a note which is just not for me. Maybe it's Isoe Super, maybe it's some sort of an ambroxan, but it comes across as very screechy and synthetic. And although I will be reviewing that one also, it's just not my thing. This one here really hits for me. It's so beautifully simple, and it's a really rare thing these days with these uber complex scents, with these uber heavy scents that are designed to last forever. And by the way, longevity in this is actually really good. Ormond Jayne Nawab Oud Intensivo, highly recommended if you like rose, if you like oud, and you want a different take on the genre, a much more fresh, a much more manly, gentlemanly version of that. My last fragrance option for the day is still very elegant, very gentlemanly, and incredibly wearable, even signature scent worthy. This one here is Vertus Monarch. First, we have to tackle the elephant in the room. This is basically a clone of Clive Christian's X. I have a decant of that, and it smells exactly the same. The longevity of this might be a little bit better just because it has a little bit more of a sweet undertone in the very deep dry down, but overall, they smell pretty much one-to-one. But what actually is Vertus Monarch? This, as its Clive Christian counterpart, is a fairly complex scent profile. It's a beautiful, spicy, aromatic. It has a lot of clove, a lot of cinnamon, a lot of herbaceousness up top, which makes for a very, very fresh, very balanced wear experience. It's a complex scent, as I said. It comes across as multifaceted. It has a huge transition top to bottom, at least on my skin. Again, it starts off very, very spicy, very fun, very sexy and alluring in a way, but then it dries down to this very dry, sort of dusty, woody vetiver. And I don't know, it just makes for a really enticing wear experience, a very masculine, very manly, gentlemanly wear experience that lasts all day. It's pretty much a 4-season wear. I could easily see myself as signature signing this, not maybe the Vertus. I would probably go for the Clive Christian just because of respect, I guess, out of the brand. But it's good. It's good. I got this in a trade. I'm not completely sold on having clones, like high-end clones, because this one here is also expensive. This, I think, runs for about 200 bucks. So Vertus is not necessarily a brand that has been very surprising to me. The only other Vertus that I smelled was the, what is that, Oud Vanilla Oud, which was completely cloying, super sweet. It was pretty much unwearable in my opinion, and I really didn't like that. This one is good. I do like it. I do appreciate the scent profile, but the fact that it's a clone kind of bugs me. I just wanted to showcase this because I had it, and scent alone, it's an objectively good fragrance, very complex, very masculine, and it perfectly fits all these comparisons that I've been making. But back to Eau Sauvage Parfum for my final recommendations and overview. This is a very, very easy scent to recommend. Do not overlook high quality designer offerings that are established, that are out there, and that are loved by the fragrance community. Actually, I just wanted to touch upon this quickly. This is surprisingly very much loved by the fragrance community. It's not niche smelling. It doesn't smell niche. It doesn't smell super complex, but there's something so beautifully well designed, so beautifully well balanced about it, that you just have to appreciate it for what it is. Again, it doesn't smell niche. This is not compared to anything that is niche quality. That doesn't even make sense to me in general, but this is just such a good offering that should not be overlooked. So this to me is an easy recommendation. I wouldn't necessarily even say decant. Well, if you can get a decant, by all means, sample this first, but it's relatively easy to try out. Just go into any shopping mall, into any shop, into any Sephora, any shop that carries Dior will have this. Just go in there, spritz yourself, and just give it time. Give it the time it deserves. It's just such a beautifully simple and functional wear experience that is really hard to hate. It just works that well. It's just so predictable. And if you have a strong scent association to this, maybe because your dad smells like this or your grandpa, don't be afraid. It's just so elegant. It's really not offensive. You can wear this in pretty much any situation, and I'll be doing just that. And I really want to close this off specifically referring my niche head buddies. If you're out there experiencing stinky fragrances, really avant-garde fragrances, super artistic, if you're into the Tosquats, that's all good. But it's also good to just take a step back and to really applaud well-designed, well-created perfumes, even if they're not that narrative, even if they're not that edgy. This is super good. I'm kicking myself because it took me so long to get to this, and I will be definitely exploring more vintage and well-designed fragrances out there. If you like this type of content, if you like my approach to video, feel free to subscribe. It's always massively appreciated and helps the channel. If you want to interact with me, leave a comment, suggestion, opinion, or anything else down below. I always reply, and I always keep the conversation open. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. Many more reviews to come, many more fun videos to come. As usual, see you in the next one, and cheers.